I would love to just welcome everyone to tonight's first part of two parts. We're doing a double Citizens Climate University this week, and that is a weekly webinar program of Citizens Climate Lobbies that provides CCL supporters like you and I with access to in-depth training opportunities on topics related to climate change and effective climate advocacy. I'm your host, Brett Cease, and tonight's topic is specifically going to jump into exploring the Climate Classroom Curriculum Training Program. We are so glad that you're here. We're so excited for this launch. This is a program that you'll hear from Sharon and Margaret that's had many hands involved and many hours making it possible. So if you have been a part of that team, a quick shout out to you as well, because I know that they couldn't have done it alone, and they'll review the team in just a little bit. But let me introduce our speakers, and then I'll get out of the way to let them take it from here. Margaret Towner is an educational consultant, coach, and curriculum writer specializing in literacy for K-12 English learners. Margaret's a collaborator in the development of Climate Classroom. Her family includes 4 generations of scientists and educators, and she made a natural transition to working on climate change concerns and civic education for young people. Margaret is also a published poet, a musician, and a literary translator from Spanish to English. And with Margaret is our wonderful National Youth Action Team Coordinator, Sharon Begatel. Sharon supports youth for CCL under 18 and their adult allies to build a vibrant national youth network within CCL. Sharon's been at it for over 30 years as an educator, curriculum developer, and program coordinator in a variety of formal and informal educational settings. From her days as a first grade teacher, Sharon's twin passions have been environmental education and empowered civic engagement. What a wonderful fit those two are to be married together with your work with CCL, Sharon. We're so glad that you're here and applying that skill set for our benefit. So with that, our 3 learning goals, if we've done our job well together in the hour ahead here, are to help you, the attendee, understand the purpose and the scope of CCL's Climate Classroom curriculum. You also have the chance to become familiar with the components of the curriculum. We'll do a thorough review and walkthrough of all of those tonight. And we'll also give you a background and some tools about what the curriculum is to offer for your local middle school, wherever that might be, or educational setting, wherever you're tuning into locally. So with that, thank you so much for being here, everyone. And we'll get started by passing it to Sharon to review our agenda together.
All right, thanks, Brett, and welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. After 2 years of work, we are super excited to share our new Climate Classroom curriculum with you. This training serves as like your ticket to access the curriculum materials. And so we have lots to cover. We'll begin with a short history and a little on what we're trying to accomplish with this project. Then we'll share with you the scope and sequence or flow of the 14 lessons. Then we'll dive into the actual components of the curriculum and how to use them. We'll share how you access the curriculum and what your role as CCL volunteer facilitator will involve, and some tips on how to approach a school. And we know there's a lot of interest in that. We'll have 2 question and answer periods, as Brett mentioned, one in the middle and one at the end. So we ask you to hold your questions for those indicated times. So let's jump right in. I'll pass it to Margaret for a little bit of history.
The idea of a climate curriculum was developed by Natalie Gutenkauf here in Long Beach. She wanted to involve high school and college students as teachers. So she met with Edric Guys, who is our Long Beach, South Bay, California chapter leader, to search for volunteers, both students and adults, to participate in our program. As Natalie gathered people from our chapter and from schools interested in the project, we began to put together a list of lessons and asked for student and adult volunteers to pair up to develop the lessons that most interested them. So at the end of the pilot program, which we taught 1 full semester, 2 of our students were able to participate in a lobby meeting with our local representative, Alan Lowenthal. Prior to the lobby meeting, we taught students how to approach their representative through email, telling their personal climate story, and then how to participate in a lobby meeting. It was exciting for students that our representatives signed on to both the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, HR 2307, during our climate classroom lessons. Let's watch a short video of the lobby meeting. But before watching it, here's an important clarification. We obtained special permission from the member of Congress to be able to film this meeting.
Yeah, hello. I'm Celine Nickerson, and I'm 13 and a 7th grader at Rogers Middle School. And I would first of all like to thank you for responding to the letter I sent, as it's very important to me and to all of our class, and as well as co-sponsoring the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. As Lily said, our class was really excited when that happened because it showed us that we had a voice and we were able to advocate for what we want and get a response. Climate Classroom has made an impact on me because they showed me I had a voice and that I'm able to advocate for what I want in the world, even if I can't do things like vote or advocate in other ways. And so one of my favorite things to do is swim at the Colorado Lagoon and Bayshore Beach. Climate change concerns me because with the rising temperatures and sea levels, my children will not be able to do what I was. They will not be able to live carefree. They will constantly be under the burden that is climate change. It is important to act now because as early as 30 years, parts of my city could be underwater, including my home, school, and other parts that are very important to me. We need to stop now because when we finally see the effect of what we have done, we won't be able to change anything. This is why I agree with Lily and that you should share with other Congress people to support the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Bill. Thank you for listening.
So that video, and I've watched it hundreds of times, brings me close to tears every time I see it. Climate Classroom had an impact on me because they showed me I had a voice, that I'm able to advocate for what I want in the world, even if I can't do things like vote, said Soli. Yes, that's exactly what we're going for. Like CCL, Climate Classroom is about personal empowerment, about finding your voice, your sense of agency in the world. And it's about how to actively engage in our democracy. And like CCL, the curriculum focuses on solutions. We explore the problem of climate change and its impacts through a justice lens, then move quickly into solutions and skills to take action. This is what we hear so many youth are needing and wanting right now, especially middle school students who are aware enough to be frightened, but young enough to be overlooked as engaged citizens. We've designed the lessons to be experiential and very interactive, so the students directly connect with the material and practice the skills. Finally, Climate Classroom is multidisciplinary. It includes science, social studies, writing skills, speaking skills, art, technology, all integrated into the lessons. It's designed for public middle schools, but could easily be adapted for high schools, for private schools or homeschoolers, or for youth organizations or other informal educational settings. So let's take a look at what educators call the scope and sequence. What's in these 14 lessons?
The Climate Classroom lessons are divided into 3 modules. We have put them together in a chart, and that you will find that link in the chat now. You can teach all 14 sequential lessons, a module of lessons that have a common theme, or even a single lesson if you wish. The theme of Module 1 is the impacts of climate change. And the intention is to share with middle school students that climate change affects us all, but in different ways. Depending on where we live or our life conditions, what one person experiences may be drastically different from someone else in a different part of the world or in a different community. Lesson 1 specifically introduces students to Climate Classroom, Citizens Climate Education, citizen engagement, and empowerment, while checking for students' prior knowledge of climate change solutions. Lesson 2, climate justice around the world. It shares how climate change is a global issue with great disparities on how it impacts people in different places and situations. Students also hear about empathy towards others, an important concept related to the disparities in the effects of climate change. Lesson 3, climate justice in your community, asks, what are the impacts of climate change where you live? Who is vulnerable and what are the disparities? What is an empathetic response and what actions can be taken? Lesson 4, guide students to create their personal climate story and learn how to share it to begin taking action on climate change. Let's take a look at Module 2 now.
In Module 2, we move into the solutions part of the curriculum. In lessons 5 and 6, students use the En-ROADS Climate Solutions Simulator to explore a range of solutions and their impacts on global temperatures. The simulator's dashboard with sliding bars that make graphs move around and the temperature go up and down is innately interesting to most middle schoolers. They discover on their own which solutions are most impactful. And yes, guess what? They find out that this thing called carbon pricing is amazingly powerful. From there, in lesson 7, students explore how these solutions can be implemented through policy. They learn what a policy is, how policies can become law, and through a group project, they learn how to use the congress.gov website to know what Congress is doing on these topics. Now, I look back and think, if I had known about congress.gov when I was 12, I might have been a more engaged citizen at a much younger age. Module 3 is designed to inspire students to take civic action. In lesson 8, students have the opportunity to contact their member of Congress. In lesson 9, to write a letter to the editor and try to get published. And in lesson 10, to dialogue with a community leader who has what we call in Climate Classroom a big voice in the community. Finally, in lessons 11 and 12, students practice lobbying their member of Congress and actually participate in a mock lobby meeting. All the powerful and empowering things we do in CCL.
At the end of the program in lesson 13, students have the chance to reflect on their learning by reviewing all the lessons and taking pride in their accomplishments. In lesson 14, students receive a Climate Advocate certificate to celebrate their work. Isn't it exciting to have young people ready to take climate action? It's time to congratulate and celebrate students on their participation and new skills. So now we'll take a look at the components of the Climate Classroom curriculum, totally a tongue twister there, using lesson 10 as an example.
So lesson plans are the heart of a lesson. They are what's behind the scenes in any classroom. So raise your hand if you've seen a lesson plan before. Oh, okay. A bunch of you, that's great. Well, we wrote these figuring that only a few CCL volunteers, or not that many, have teaching backgrounds. And we wanted to make this open to everyone. So we made these lesson plans very detailed, including full scripts for the volunteer facilitator. We divided our lesson plans into preparation information, the actual lesson content with scripts, and the post-lesson follow-up. So let's take a look at a sample lesson. So first, let's get a sense of the overall plan layout. On the left-hand side in the blue, you'll see the various categories that make up the plan. Next, just to the right, we have a time column. Keeping time is really important. These lessons last just short of one class period, 40 to 45 minutes. As a teacher, I know it's easy to get bogged down on one particular step. So here's a teaching tip. Watching the time column is super important. In the middle of the plan, we have all the content. And way to the right, we've listed the materials or links you'll need. And here is a really, really important note. You're going to hear me say this over and over and over again, but we want you to get this. Use the links in this materials technology column to make editable copies of slide presentations and student journals. This is the only place you'll be able to access editable versions of these documents. And we're going to explain presentations and journals in just a minute. In the white area towards the top of the plan, we have the pre-lesson information you'll need. You'll find the key lesson concepts and vocabulary, which is especially helpful for English language learners. Under that, in every lesson plan, we have a link to the educational standards alignment charts, which are essential for teachers and administrators. We'll tell you a lot more about that a little bit later. The independent follow-up section reminds you what the students were working on in the previous lesson. And then the pre-lesson prep tells you exactly what you need to do to get ready for the lesson. You'll need to go to the links in the materials technology column in each lesson to access that lesson's editable presentation and student journals. It's really important to take a look at the pre-lesson prep section way ahead of time, especially on this lesson where you'll invite a community leader to come visit with the students. And that's not something you want to leave for the last minute. So the light gray boxes are where you'll find the actual lesson, complete with a script. Now, you don't have to follow the script word for word, but it serves as a guide. If you notice way up at the top of the document, if you can scroll up there, Brett, yeah. At the top of the document is a color-coded key. The facilitator's instructions are in red and the script is italicized. The teacher's participation is written in purple and the students in green. So going on back down to the gray boxes, you'll see that each lesson starts with an introduction. So you might be co-teaching this, or you might be working with a student facilitator, as we did in Long Beach. So you need to take a quick minute for introductions. Then notice that each lesson begins with an activity to hook the students in and a connection to the previous lesson. In this lesson, the hook is to look at a newspaper and scan for a student-written letter to the editor, because they've just, in the lesson 9, they've worked on writing letters to the editor. From there, we move into the body of the lesson. Most lessons have slide presentations, so the lesson plan takes you through the narration of the slides. The plan also walks you through additional activities, such as in this one, getting ready for the community leader guest. Often there's a journal-based activity to work on, either independently or in a group. And finally, we end with a wrap-up in which we synthesize what was covered in the lesson and explain the student's assignment. In this lesson, the students will create a thank you card, a creative way to reflect on the community leader's visit. Finally, on the lesson plan, we have the actual assignment under the independent follow-up section. We didn't want to call it homework, so we called it independent follow-up. In general, these activities are easily done for homework, but occasionally the teacher may need to provide a little more classroom time and support to complete the activity. All right, so now we'll move on to presentations. Most of the lessons have an accompanying Google slide presentation. Not all, but most of them. So again, you need to access the presentation and make your own copy via the link in the materials technology column on the lesson plan. The script for each slide is in the lesson plan as well as in the presenter's notes below. Several of the presentations are designed to be customized to your local area, and a few slides are animated. So we chose to look at lesson 10 for that reason, because it has both of those. So let's take a look. So when you access slide presentations from the lesson plan, you'll automatically make a copy. So don't worry, you won't be messing with our originals when you start messing around with the slides. Every slide deck begins with a title slide. Then we move into content. Let's move to slide 2. So this one is animated. You won't see the animation until you put it in slideshow mode. So if you do that, Britt, thanks. So click slideshow at the top, and then with every click, another part of the slide will appear. Make sure you practice if you're not used to doing that. Great. All right, let's scroll through to slide 5. Okay, this slide with the big word example on it is to be customized. That's why we have the word example there. It's also animated. So on this one, you need to erase the word example and then put photos of 3 people in the community your students might recognize as big voices, or we call them grass tops in CCL. You'll need a little bit of knowledge on how to drop photos into a slide and how to create a text box to write a caption. If you've never done this, you can search for how to create a Google slide presentation, or feel free to contact me for support. The next slide, slide 6, is another one where you'll need to customize. This is an example from Long Beach. You can make yours as simple or as complicated as you'd like. The important thing is that students are able to relate to their community. And then on slide 7, the slideshow wraps up with some visuals for the thank you card assignment. You're welcome to customize these slides too, if you'd like, but the essential slides to customize are indicated in the lesson plan.
Now we'll go to the student journals, and they're intended to help students document their learning. It also helps teachers document student work. Student journals are used for in-class activities as well as independent follow-up activities. Sometimes teachers have extra class time available when they can give students some time to work on their journals. Every lesson except lesson 14 has a journal that corresponds to the same numbered lesson. You need to access the student journals and make your own copy via the link in the materials technology column on the lesson plan. Make sure to do that. We also offer all the journals packaged into one document called the Complete Journal. Now let's look at the lesson 10 student journal as an example. So you can see it on your screen there. The lesson 10 journal has questions for students to reflect on and to write their responses. They are designed to involve students directly with the lesson. We want you to know that each journal asks students to do different kinds of activities. When you download your instructional materials, you'll see how they're varied. Think of journals as an opportunity for students to go deeper into the curriculum, exploring and documenting their learning through critical thinking skills. We want students to leave our program with this knowledge in place so they can go on and become student active in their climate classroom work. I want to say that Anne Brown, who's here today, spent hours and hours on time working on our journals. Now we're going to go to the user's guide, which contains essential information for facilitators to read prior to instruction. Very important. It includes lists, charts, and descriptions that give facilitators the background knowledge to actually teach the lessons in a middle school classroom. We wanted to be sure that volunteers who have not been in a classroom recently would be familiar with some of the strategies, lesson designs, and teaching techniques that we have used in the lessons. So let's take a look now. We'll be scrolling down through the user's guide so that you can see what it covers. We have a cover on the document, and then we have the table of contents that directs you to all the topics presented in the user's guide, and it will provide answers to many of your questions. Next, we have the introduction to Climate Classroom, which gives you basic information about the purpose, design, and organization of the program. Components of the Climate Classroom program includes a list of important elements of the program and useful tips, including the roles of the volunteer facilitator and the classroom teacher. What do each of them need to do? Volunteers should definitely read this prior to teaching the curriculum. A chart of the Climate Classroom lessons follows the components of the program. You will see that we are not directly teaching science lessons about climate change. We are addressing the impacts of climate change, possible solutions, and taking action. Next is a brief description of the Climate Classroom alignment with educational standards. We purposely crafted our program to align with educational standards because that is what is required by public schools. And we're going to cover some of these standards in just a minute. In the user's guide, we have included a document, How to Work with a Middle School. And this also gives you tips, and we'll come back to that later, about how to approach a school. Now, in Appendix A, we share the following charts: a lesson plan template explaining the different sections of a lesson vocabulary, active participation recommendations, so you can scroll on down. There's the vocabulary. And then next is our active participation recommendations. And finally, technology that would be useful in using our program. Appendix B shows the specific alignment of Climate Classroom to language arts standards. So we have all of the language arts standards that relate to our program, and we show which lessons use which standards. Appendix C shows the alignment of the program to social studies standards. Now, there are national social studies standards, and we know that each state can adopt their own standards. So these are just guidelines for you to use in your own city and your own state. Appendix D shows the alignment of the program to the next generation science standards, which also are some national standards. Finally, Appendix E is the release form to be signed by parents and saved if you're going to use any student photographs, videos, audio recordings, or written communications. If you think you might do this, I recommend that you get parent signatures, start to collect them at the beginning of the program. Finally, we have two feedback forms, one for students and another for facilitators, who are our volunteers, and teachers. The forms are intended to collect data from the participants about their responses to the curriculum. But keep in mind that no personal information will be collected. With your feedback, we can develop ideas for modifications and improvements to the curriculum. This is the way we will know whether our curriculum works in inspiring youth to participate in civic engagement. We're excited to be able to hear back from you and learn from you now. So thank you so very much.
All right, so accessing the curriculum. So we hope that after this training, you're excited about taking this to a school in your area. So here's how you can get your hands on the materials and get going. All the Climate Classroom materials are accessed via the CCL Youth website. And here it is, youth.citizensclimatelobby.org/resources/curriculum. It's out there, yay. This page, by the way, was created by Vinay, a 9th grade high school student member of the Youth Action Team. So kudos to him. So if you go to that web page, I imagine all of you are doing that right now, scroll down to the bottom and you'll find the sign up button. You can see that on the slide. That will take you to a short Google form. And as soon as you fill it out and hit submit, you'll receive a message with the link to the Google folder with all of the materials. They are yours to use. We just ask that you keep us posted on how you use them. And we may try and keep in touch with you along the way. Again, I want to emphasize that the only way to get to the editable versions of the presentations and journals is through the actual links in the lesson plan. If you go to that Google folder that we're giving you access to, you'll see folders with the lessons in them, and you'll see presentations and journal pages in each lesson folder. Those are for previewing only. Just want to make sure that's understood. All right, let's move on to the role of the facilitator. So what is your role as a Climate Classroom facilitator? You can implement this program on your own, or you can create a team of adult facilitators from your chapter. Another option is to coordinate a team of student facilitators, as we did in the Long Beach pilot. It's up to you. It's important to note, though, that as an adult volunteer, you should not be alone with students while in the classroom. That is part of CCL's current youth engagement policy, as well as public school legal policy. The teacher should always be in the classroom with you. So as a facilitator, you will make connections with the local school. We'll have much more on how to approach a school coming up. You'll need to build a relationship with the classroom teacher and then work together to decide the scope and the schedule of the program. Once you know which lessons you'll be bringing into the classroom, review the lessons and find out well beforehand what preparation you might need. Then you'll implement the lessons and complete the feedback forms. We'd love for you to document the lessons with photos or videos as the school allows. If the photos or videos or writings of the students seem worthy of sharing on a national level, then we have that photo release form Margie showed you for minors in the user's guide. And really that's it. Again, you might share this role with another CCL volunteer from your chapter. And please know that we have a team of folks here, Margaret, Ann, and I, who'd be excited to support you at every step of the way. We're just delighted to have this curriculum get out into the world.
So one of the biggest questions is, how do you approach a school so that you can share Climate Classroom? So we have a document. The first part of this document gives you important tips about how to find a school and interact with school personnel. So if you happen to find an interested teacher first, then the two of you can approach an administrator together. Each administrator and teacher will want to know whether Climate Classroom is a good match for their school, appropriate for their students, and aligned with their educational standards. So share the promotional materials to talk about the curriculum, including the overview of Climate Classroom, which is a 2-page document that you can give to them. This document has a summary of the standards, and when you refer to standards, you're speaking the educator's language, so that's good. The second part of this document gives you important information about being on a school campus. Keep in mind that safety practices are in place at all our schools, and you should always check in with the office before you go to the classroom. You may need an appointment to go on campus also. So there are several things under this second part that you will need to read through. The third part answers how you can prepare with the teacher in order to actually teach the curriculum. You want to let the teacher know who will do what in the delivery of the lessons. Make sure to give the curriculum materials link to the teacher so that they can access the lesson plans, the user's guide, the student journals, etc. This last section of how to work with your middle school document should clarify several important points for you and your collaborating teacher. So we hope that this will be very useful to you. As you can see, there's lots of things to read before you actually get to that classroom.
And those documents can be found in the How to Work with the School folder in the in the Google folders. All right. Well, with that, we've concluded our training. We hope you've become familiar enough with Climate Classroom to at least get started, and that you're excited enough to go to our website and have a look around. We've done our best to share a lot of information in a short amount of time, but we know that you may have questions along the way. So we'll take a few more questions now, and then please feel free to reach out to us again at youth@citizensclimatelobby.org for any additional guidance. So thanks so much for attending this training.
Thank you so much, Sharon and Margaret. I know that I am joined by 50 other folks here tonight with a big round of applause. Before we get to Q&A, we are just blown away by the work that you and the larger team have put together. I am so excited to hear about the stories. And I'll just add on top of what you just shared, please share us your success stories. Anything that you have found with your team, with your local crew, any of the bright stories, videos, content, we'd love to hear it and celebrate together. And this is just a real homecoming of a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears that people have poured into making this possible. We hope that you found tonight's training empowering and engaging and really motivational. And we look forward to seeing you on the other side, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration.
Like what you hear? Recommend us to your friends and make sure to give us a 5-star rating. It helps us show up on other listeners' feeds. Feel free to pass on any suggestions for future episodes in the comments as well.
And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.